Joining us today.
Hello there again, everyone. Without further ado, I'm really delighted to welcome our very first speaker for this fall's programming, Ellen Sue. Ellen is a director and designer at Nathan Love, and she has a passion for character design and storytelling. She's also a beloved teacher at the School of Visual Arts and a co-leader of the not-for-profit Women in Animation chapter based here in New York, where she organizes heaps of educational industry events for their members. I've asked Ellen to speak to her background of illustration, design, and 3D animation, as she's incredibly passionate about this world. It's an honor to welcome her and to have her kick off our upcoming programming. Ellen, we are so lucky to have you, and finally at that, and we genuinely appreciate you coming here today, sharing the space and sharing your story. So I'll let you speak to a few minutes on how you entered this exciting industry.
Yeah. Hi guys. So, all right, I kind of wanted to bring you guys back maybe further than normal, just to like, when you see somebody that's already working in the industry, you might, like, how long does it actually take somebody to get there, right? Like, I am a director and designer now, but really, what is that, So born and raised in Queens. And I just found this old sketchbook of mine. Apparently, I started drawing when I was 8, back in 1991. This is what it looks like. It says Ellen's Pokemon and Joke Book. And so I would come home and copy Pokemon into the sketchbook. I would watch something called Toonami at the time. They would show anime on Cartoon Network. And Sailor Moon was like one of my favorite things. So this was in 2000, 20 years ago. This was my Sailor Moon sketch. So it was like every day, elementary school, come home, and I would be drawing in front of the TV, and that kind of continued in that trend. I wasn't really like an outdoor person. I didn't do sports or activities. It was like elementary school, middle school, whatever. I would just be at the computer drawing on these online forums, kind of like posting my artwork and sharing my artwork, getting ripped apart by trolls. But it kind of gave me a head start from a lot of my colleagues. Like, by the time I got into college at the School of Visual Arts, I was pretty much a pro at, Photoshop. I was able to use the computer and tablet and the Wacom tablet very, very efficiently. And yeah, that just kind of gave me a head start. And while I was at SVA, the great thing about our school is that everybody at school is a working professional. So, our teachers are at studios, at jobs, and they can recommend students that they see potential for internships. And they also really push professional practices on us at an early age. Like, by sophomore year, we were being spoken to, by industry professionals and taught about like networking and stuff. So I knew that like sophomore year, while I'm still living with my parents and I don't have to like worry about rent, I'm like, I'm gonna apply to these internships in New York City. I applied to 40 internships and I hear back from 2. And so, yeah, I all you need is that one. And I applied, so I got that one internship. I think it paid like $20 a day. It paid for my lunch and my subway fare, right? And school credit, but it was one of those. And I just kept working. People in the school saw that, I got an internship at sophomore year. I was showing potential, and they were recommending me throughout the school year of junior year. And then I got more internships while I was still in school. And then by the summer of junior year, I had applied and gone into a Pixar internship. So by the time I graduated, I feel like your mic is muted or something, Kat.
Thank you for noticing that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I was just saying that you earned that coveted Pixar internship.
I did, yeah. 10 spots out of 1,000 applicants.
Very big.
Yeah, so I was very lucky. But I would say that, you know, all of that was because I got such a head start in drawing and developing those skills at a very early age. And by the time I graduated, I could hit the ground running. I didn't have to work for like low pay internships. You know, I went from $20 a day to $300 a day, right? So it really, like, getting started early really was crucial to my career. And from then on, it's kind of like a snowball, I would say. So I'm just gonna share my screen. But one of the first opportunities I got was with Kat at the Mill, where I did some very embarrassing, like, young professional things. But
you did not. You absolutely did not. But you could speak to some of the.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say people make mistakes and we all grow. And you know, apparently it wasn't so terrible that I'm not working anymore, but
We are our own worst critics.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, so it's like, to be in our business, it's really about, you know, of course, skill, but it's also making friends, being somebody that people want to work with, being, you know, just friendly, and somebody that anybody would be willing to recommend, right? So at the Mill, while I wasn't working on like 2D animated spots, I met a director called Chris Merck. And Chris Merck actually led to my first 2D animated project, which is Mojo Thunder. It's a little not PG friendly, so I'm not going to show it. But then that also led to this Facebook project, which was like my first, one of my first directing projects. And so that was done for Facebook to test out their vertical format.
I remember this project very, very well.
Yeah. So very much Avatar inspired, some of the shots. It was actually based off an illustration I did like years ago, prior to getting that project. Yeah, so all of those from that one person. Kirill, which was like the person that I had met from RGA, an advertising agency, where I wasn't doing the most, you know, exciting character work. He actually had his own studio, and he did stuff for TED on the side. And so he hired me on for another little project for StoryCorps, which was a lot more my jam in terms of like beautiful, like colorful illustrations and characters and fun stuff. And that was like my first art directing credit. His wife saw my work, and she works at TED Ed. So his wife hired me as like a director for a TED Ed project. So this was a poetry series for TED Ed, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And so I got to animate that and design that. And it's just like that. It's like a little snowball. One person sees your stuff, and the other, and it just goes from there. And my boss now, Joe Barascano, who's mentored me in becoming a director, a creative director, he was my teacher, thesis teacher at School of Visual Arts. And so he was the first one to hire me as staff as a director, where then I worked on campaigns like NBA with this more like super powered comic book Spider-Verse inspired project. And Nickelodeon, which is the movie intro to be played on the theater, big screens in front of the SpongeBob movie. I'll just play that. Yeah. So 20 years in the making, 20 years in the making. But yeah, that's my journey. This is where I am now. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you sharing your story because you have a really incredible trajectory and you're an inspiration to so many of my students and participants that I've worked with over the past few years. You did highlight TED Ed, which I think is a really great reference for those of you who are in the audience right now, for all these incredibly animated projects. Ellen's done a phenomenal job directing her piece on Robert Frost. I'm a big fan of that particular project. And for those of you who are interested in the world of animation, there are a lot of really great, incredible TED Ed pieces that you could reference from this website. I kind of want to get a sense from your end. We've talked about this before independently outside of your visit today. What are some ways in which our wonderful participants who are here today can share their story and essentially become storytellers in their own rights? Like, I thought it was really cool that you brought up your chapbook, your old book of illustrations when you were 8. That's so special. And I was kind of wondering if you had any advice for those who are within the space right now as to how they could become storytellers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing and also the hardest thing is just to do it. We are in an age where there's so many platforms, right? Like TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. You can just be making content, and there's so many apps too. Like the technology is so much better than when we first started. That if you have a story to tell, you just need to start, right? Like I would say like these drawings here were pretty bad by my standard now, but because I was able to just do it, I eventually became better at it, right? So the first project you take on is not going to be perfect. It's going to have flaws, but you learn from it, and the next one and the next one, right? And it applies for anything. Like if you want to be a writer, you just have to write the script. If you want to be an animator, you have to animate. And you also have to put it out there for people to find. Because if you have all these ideas and they're just in your head and you're like, yes, that's going to be great someday, if only. Well, if nobody sees it, then you're just an animator or an artist in your own mind, right? Nobody's going to see it, nobody's going to find you, and nobody's going to give you an opportunity to do what you love.
Mm-hmm. I think as storytellers too, we seek inspiration outside of ourselves, and I'm curious as to who inspires you or what inspires you. It would be good to get a sense of how you curate or collate this information, because I know it varies from artist to artist.
I think in terms of who, I guess it's like my coworkers and my colleagues. Just seeing what they achieve and what fun new project they've worked on is really inspiring for me. But also, like, I watch a lot of movies, and I read a lot of, or I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And it's what I recommend for students too. Like, any successful director out there, you're going to be like, okay, who are your influences, right? Like for Tarantino, he loved these old Hong Kong martial arts movies. So it's like, if there's something that you really love, watch a lot of it and learn from it, be inspired by it. I think I remember like watching Spider-Verse and walking out of the movie theater, like my whole body was buzzing, because I think it was the first time I was seeing my love for anime, all that action-packed, sequences, the timing of the action, and also just the authenticity of the minority characters on the screen for the first time for me. And that was really, really inspiring. And you can see that influence in the NBA project, like that project inspired so many others as well. So yeah, just watching a lot, taking in a lot of content, and being critical of it too, like thinking about why something made you feel a certain way. If it's good, what was good about it? If it's bad, why didn't you like it? What turned you away from it? Learning from those.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. What does a typical day look like for you in your role at this time? Or how, and you know what, maybe let's expand upon this further since we have some time. How has your role evolved in the day-to-day? Because I'm conscious that when you first left university, you might have had a very different experience than what you have now.
Yeah, I mean, so as an artist, your day to day is really like you get a task and you tackle it, right? And you try to, if I'm a character designer, I'll have to draw a bunch of different options and submit it to whoever my art director is, get feedback and revise, right? You always have to revise based off of the feedback and notes you get. As a director now, my day is less so actually doing the work and more so giving feedback, giving references, because you as the director have to have a vision of where you want this project to go. The script could say, the boy wearing a green shirt is crying. But then there's all these questions like, what kind of green shirt? Is it long sleeves, short sleeves? Is it bright green, dark green? And then how is he crying? Is he, sobbing like really loudly, hysterically, or is it like silent tears running down his cheeks, right? So you have to figure out all of that, find the appropriate references and relay it all and delegate those tasks to your team, right? Having the answers. Yeah, and because I have more of that like illustration background, I'm able to take it one step further where I provide drawovers for my board artists or my designers or my animators to make sure like character and background, all of those designs look right, stay on model. So it's a lot of quality control as well.
Understandable. And what does that space look like? Do you have regular meetings throughout the day? How does a project, as you're at Nathan Love at this time, how is a project brought to you?
Yeah, so generally like the executive producers will have an idea of like what my style is and what I'm excited to do and direct. So they'll give me projects and be like, hey, are you interested in doing this? And if I do have a strong vision or idea for the story and brief, then that's something I start developing, pulling references. A lot of it that we've gone online, it's because we're a relatively small studio, it's been pretty painless. I know that for 3D teams, it's a little more difficult because with 3D projects and pipelines, it's there's just larger files, right? With 2D animation, it's a little bit easier for people to be on their own. We generally have like a kickoff meeting in the mornings, wrap up, give any notes, and then rinse and repeat. I think it's been pretty smooth for us, and we've actually gone remote officially, like for everyone, and we're gonna start using AWS, which is Amazon's cloud service,
right?
For 3D. Yeah.
You actually touched upon a really interesting piece that we were hoping to chat about today. So is your entire studio, I'm conscious that some studios are occasionally having artists come into the office or trickling in, bearing in mind, certain, health and safety regulations within each studio. I know some studios have fully migrated to an entirely remote platform. Is everyone at Nathan Love on a remote platform at this time?
Yeah, we're all working from home. I think we do have like our tech person would have to go in sometimes to deal with server things and, computers sometimes. But for the most part, we're just at home on our own stations. Yeah.
And how is that experience for you?
I love it. I personally love it because I'm like a roll out of bed and go to my computer kind of person, which is probably unhealthy for me and my body. But I think it's nice, like as a director, when I was working in the studio, my job kind of, yes, I have to work during the day, but it really happens at night after everybody has submitted their work, because then I have to review everything, give my feedback, and then kick everybody off the next day, right? So when I'm working from home, it's a little easier. I could like take the day a little bit easier, do what I need to do, and when all my artists submit work for me, then I can like, after 7, put in hours then to like give the feedback. And it's just nice not to have to stay late at a studio, come home late and not be able to like cook dinner for myself, So I feel like for me, I would love to stay working this way. And I think the opportunities have like really opened up. I think more people are seeing that this is a viable way of working. More studios are open to remote artists. So like you have so many more opportunities and resources, right? Like all the big studios, Disney, Netflix, Pixar, whatever, they're holding so many free seminars, you know, for you guys to watch and see how to pitch a show, how to get into character design. It's exciting.
It is exciting. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that sentiment too, because I know when I speak with my friends in the industry, some of us are like me in that they do struggle, you know, constantly working from home. But as a recruiter, sometimes, you know, you always crave that contact with individuals and being able to have those conversations. But from an artistic point of view, I genuinely appreciate your sharing. From a creative perspective, it probably helps you keep a bit of a distance in those conversations.
Yeah.
So going back to the theme of storytelling, I wanted to talk about the skills and experiences you would need in order to become a storyteller. So if that's something that you can expand upon, and while you think about this, I'm conscious that so many of you are sharing these really wonderful questions. So I'm going to start sharing these questions with Ellen since we've got some time. But just wanted to get a sense as to your recommendations on skills and experiences that you value that you think would make a really great storyteller.
Yeah, experiences for sure, because I think there's a term like write from what you know. And so like things that are really unique and specific to you, how you experienced it, what your reactions were, but also people you've observed or met in life, right? It could be somebody, a friend, a close friend. It could even just be a random person that you saw and how they were reacting to, you know, a girlfriend, or how they're reacting to a pigeon on the street. Like those little things that you take in from just living life make your stories a little richer and more unique and more authentic. In terms of skills, you know, I think the skills you need to develop for storytelling depends on what format of storytelling you want to do, because like writing a novel is different from writing a comic or drawing a comic, and it's different from a film, right? With film, well, let's start with a novel. With a novel, you can like just introduce a character, tell their backstory, give, you know, all this, like tell what they're thinking at a moment. But with a film, you can't do that unless you have a narrator, right? So unless you have somebody saying, this is Bob. Bob is an architect with a family and kids, and he's $100,000 in debt, right? Like, how can you then transform that information to be a visual story? Like, how do you show he's $100,000 in debt? Is he like, are his clothes, you know, terrible? Did he just lose his home or something? So you really have to think about those things in order to develop, you know, like get good at whatever format you want to tell your stories in. And then, but besides that, I think two things would be character motivation and pacing. So character motivation is, do you understand what all the characters in your story want? Like, why does the hero want to get the orb at the other end of the earth? You know, why does Voldemort want to kill Harry Potter? Why is Homelander such a psychopath? Like, if you as a storyteller understand why, what drives them, what they're scared of, then you can tell a better story, right? Then your audience can understand it. Then the next step is how to relay that information to your audience, which is the pacing part, right? Because you have control over how much information they get and when they get it. So pacing is quite important in terms of like, if the amount of information that you give your audience is too slow, they might get bored and stop watching. If it's too fast, they could be confused and then not want to continue watching. And so like keeping the story moving forward and still interesting is very, very important. Yeah, so I feel like those two.
Yeah, those are really helpful bits of advice, I think, to all of us, including myself. So thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask before we open up to the floor is there any particular project that you've worked on for which you are most passionate? And it could be maybe not just the one, maybe there are a couple of projects that you might have in mind. And if you could perhaps maybe share them with us, if you haven't already.
I mean, I think the ones that I shared were like some of my my recent ones that I was really passionate about, like with Nickelodeon. I felt like I've been teaching, right? And I've been teaching film language and cinematography to my students for the last 3 years. And while I've been doing that, I've been growing my own library. And I felt like Nickelodeon's project was the first time I was actually able to put that knowledge into use.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really exciting for me. And then like NBA was fun too, because being able to bring in some of the anime passion of like Super Saiyan DBZ and super powered effects into the NBA campaign was really, really exciting. But stuff that that I'm working on right now, I'm actually working on developing a show pitch that I'm super, super passionate about. And it's okay.
I know there's only a certain amount you may not be able to reveal or reveal.
Sure, yeah. It's essentially like a film noir mystery series but it's based with Buddhism and Chinese mythology. So I don't know if any of you have seen Ghost Bride on Netflix, but Ghost Bride was the first time I've seen authentic Chinese mythology actually put on Western, like a widely available Western platform, and with a certain like way of the quality of filmmaking, right? So that was really exciting and inspiring for me. And I've wanted to make something like that for 5 years now. And I think with quarantine and COVID and the state of our country right now more than ever, I was feeling like I need to be making stuff that I love and I want to do, like my dream. I need to get a move on achieving my dream. So that was a little like kick in my butt to get me motivated to start doing that.
That's beautifully said. So one of our anonymous participants has submitted a question asking, you know, have you had to deal with changing studios? And if so, what was that experience like for you? And how did you decide, you know, with that headspace that you might have been in, like, how did you decide whether to stay or to leave?
Mm-hmm. So when I first graduated, after seeing, after experiencing a couple of places already through internships, I felt like I wanted to be a freelancer. Like that was my thing. I wanted to travel around the world and see what the different cultures were like. So I was really excited about moving around. And once I felt like I had learned enough, because you hear, maybe, I don't know if you have or haven't, but you hear people complain about their coworkers or the way things are run at studios. And I was just like, is it the same everywhere? Is the grass greener? And what I learned was where I settled on Nathan Love because I felt like I really liked the family culture. It felt like everyone was really supportive, that my creative ideas were taken seriously, and we all just helped each other grow, right? I found that place because I tried so many others, and I had something to compare it to. This year, I'm actually gonna leave Nathan Love next year. So that was, I decided once I knew that I wanted to make a cartoon show, I knew that I needed to start working at places that made cartoon shows, that had those pipelines. And I had to make those connections sooner rather than later. So that was the deciding factor. One of my friends, they like to say, like, once you stop learning at a place, that's time to move on. And 5 years has been really, really great. I've learned so much at Nathan, but I do feel like I'm getting comfortable now with directing projects there. So I feel like it's time to be uncomfortable and be challenged again with whatever's next. Yeah.
It's a big loss for them. And I appreciate your transparency as you talk about this transition, because I can't imagine it's easy for you either. They've been such a family to you.
Yeah, 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 but it was okay because like, they're like lifelong friends and
They will be.
yeah, and hopefully I'm sure I would love to have the opportunity to work with them again. So.
Thank you. Lato is bringing up a question in terms of, any advice for character design? And this is kind of like a two-part question because I think a lot of our participants are also very interested in hearing what softwares you work with.
Okay, yeah, I would say I work with Photoshop, but I am industry standard would be Photoshop. In terms of what you use to practice and improve your skill, it doesn't matter. Drawing is drawing, right? You could draw on your iPad, you could draw on a sketchbook. You just have to draw a lot. And I would say drawing from life studies. So I will actually share my screen. Let's see. So one of the things that I like to do, so this is one of my character design projects. I actually took this class with Chris Sasaki, who was like the lead character designer for at Pixar for, what's the story with the emotions in your head?
Oh,
Inside Out.
Yes, Inside Out. Yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah, and he's with Tanko Studios now. But so he had this course and a lot of it started from drawing from reference, right? So if you look at these images above here, this is all drawing a certain personality and actor and character, the expressions, studying the way they hold their face and what that makes you feel. Like if you look at these expressions, what kind of character and personality are you already getting from them, right? Once you study that and draw from reference, then you can start designing things based off of what you've learned. So again, this lady, I watched a lot of like Dalmatians and Cruella de Vil, the live action. She had some really great faces. She was able to push those expressions so hard. So that was great. And then you can start designing and you start, as a character designer, you're kind of a storyteller too, right? Because you're thinking about how this person reacts to different scenarios that happen in their life, right? When Gladys is like making moves on Lionel, how is he reacting? The shape of his hair kind of reacts to his personality and emotions as well. So yeah, just a lot of exploration and storytelling and just drawing from reference.
These character designs are incredible.
Thanks.
So thank you for sharing.
They were a lot of fun. I wish I could spend all day doing that again. And maybe I will once I go freelance. We'll see.
So, okay, wonderful. So you're going freelance, but we'll talk a little bit about that shortly.
Okay.
Benefits of full-time versus freelance. Some of our participants are asking, what skills are important to learn to stand out amongst the crowd, like amongst other artists? What are some tips and tricks you recommend that individuals can submit in their portfolios or have, in the conversations that they have during this time with future employers or hiring managers? What are some tips that you recommend on how to set yourself apart from the rest?
So I would say that applying to commercial studios is a little different from applying to Cartoon Network or, Nickelodeon. And unfortunately with the bigger studios, I do feel like a recommendation is very key because so many people are applying. A recommendation could put your portfolio at the top of the pile. That's not to say that like, if you don't have any connections, they could still hire you. Like I've seen people be hired just because they have a very prolific Instagram, like they post so much and they have a huge following and, they see the skill. So putting your skill out there and making sure that your stuff is tagged appropriately on social media, that the thumbnails, whether you're using Behance, Instagram, ArtStation, that the stuff is, curated appropriately too. What's your thumbnail that you're choosing as the front image? When you're applying to, let's say, a commercial studio, which I feel like is more like you just send an email in, you know, with a link to your website, I like to include a little GIF or some image, just to like, they might not read your email, they might not even click the link, but if they open the email, then they'll see the image, and if they like what they see, they might stick around to read the rest of it. So that's like the attention grabber. Advice for once you have an opportunity, whether it's an internship or even if it's like an assistant position. I heard something recently at another job, at another one of these seminars. They were saying that they had an intern, a PA, which is like one of the, you know, most entry level positions that you could get. So the production assistant would see what the tasks were for character designers, and he'd do them on his own. So, you know, alongside doing his production assistant duties, he would also do the character design tasks and then ask the feedback from the supervisor or the character designer. And that kind of like showed his drive, and it showed like as he improved and got better and then started, you know, like actually drawing stuff that was on model and something that they could use on the show, then they were able to promote him, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like having that drive and ambition with whatever opportunity you can get to get in the door is really, really great. I've had interns do that in a different way on my end. There was an animator, she wanted to become a director. So what she would do is, since she was in our studio, she had access to our servers, she would just, between tasks or during lunch break, she would like look through all of our other projects, see what the design treatments were like, what the pitch treatments were like for the projects, you know, what the notes are like. And she just absorbed that, you know. Nobody told her to do it. She didn't have to do it, but she had that drive and people noticed. So that was what kept her coming back, and we wanted to hire her again and give her more responsibility.
You bring up a good point too, that self-motivation is key, and being overly communicative and just trying to, you know, put in your best efforts is really, really important in terms of getting yourself out there.
Yeah, because you never know who's watching. And you might be at a place that's not like the most exciting project, but then you don't know when those people are going to move on to another project that's really exciting, right? Mm-hmm. Like, just so give your all to whatever opportunity you have.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. So I'm noticing some themes in some of the questions that we're getting, and we are actually, we do have a bit more time. So I encourage those of you who are participants to send through a few more questions, as it were, because they're really, really great. And no question is silly enough, I promise you. But adding to what Ellen was mentioning earlier, some of our participants want to know if you have any tips for networking. You know, I'm conscious that during this time, most of us have migrated, if not all of us have migrated to this online digital presence, and we're having these conversations through an online space as opposed to in person at this time. Do you have some thoughts and some recommendations for networking that you could offer the participants that you feel might be helpful to those who are here?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Discord. But it is like Slack, and it's pretty much, I feel like the younger generation, the gamers and artists are on Discord, and like professionally, everyone's on Slack. But Discord has so many great online communities for artists that you could meet other artists, like share your work, get feedback. Twitter is also great for making those connections. And I would say Twitter is more like cartoon side of things. Commercials, not too much on Twitter. I feel like they're more on Instagram and Behance. But trying to connect to a community like that, you know, that was like the equivalent of when I was young in high school, I would go on this thing called Gaia online. And I would like draw commissions of people's characters, you know, and that was one way of making friends online. And I feel like you could just do that and make those connections that way. Also, things like, so with women in animation, what we did once the quarantine happened, we did an online career fair. We created our online community on Discord, where we're like sharing job postings and internship opportunities, and people can ask advice, you know, from all of our community. So it's almost, I want to say, easier, because the opportunity to go into an in-person event that's like one night only for an hour for drinks and cocktails, like I don't have that easy of a time to really make lasting connections at those events either. But if you guys are like sharing work that you're passionate about, there's something really like something bigger for you guys to talk about, you know, instead of just trying to make a good first in-person impression.
I absolutely would like to expand upon what you've said too, because now in this day and age, we have more access to professionals who are often quite busy in the industry and can't always travel to get to events such as SIGGRAPH or, there's just a myriad of, Comic-Con and all these different events. And now being able to share this space online together, even these sessions that we have, and which we've had the luxury of you kicking us off for this very first session, this is a networking opportunity. So for those of you who are participating within this space, you have the opportunity. You're meeting Ellen. You can connect with her on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and you have access to a really talented, incredibly well-connected artist within the industry who is, it's a wonderful networking opportunity.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
No, it's very, very true. As you know, I think very highly of you. Steph has a really great question. And hello again, Steph. This is a familiar face. When applying for those internships early on in your career, because we've all been there and we all have our fond memories or not so fond memories, because it can be a struggle sometime. Was there anything different from the applications that you'd sent through, the 2 out of 30 or 2 out of 40 that you shared, that actually got attention from the studios, that stood out to the studios? So what about your application for those 2 opportunities that got back to you helped you stand out? And do you have any advice for those looking for new opportunities on how to stand out in their own applications?
Right. Nope, there was no difference. It's just cast a wide net, because the thing is, studios might see your application at whenever you send it, and then they might like not have any opportunity for you. So it's really like luck, you know, are you sending this to them at a moment that they'll actually read it, and at a moment where they actually have opportunity for you? So it's just copy and paste. I did make my resume pretty. I included some like drawings on the resume. But in terms of my reel, it was just like my homework assignments from college, from sophomore year. So, oh, and some illustrations that I did in my free time. So I would say that like, while my 3D skill wasn't fantastic, because I've been drawing and illustrating for so long, that kind of like gave the oomph, like, okay, she has an eye, has that ability to draw. So that could translate well. You know, it's like potential for training a 3D person. But yeah, it's casting a wide net. And it's like, even, you know, Kat, I'm sure with the applicants that submit to you, like we've gotten great applicants that we haven't been able to hire for like a year. And then a year later, I'm like, wait, this is the perfect project. It's time. And the only reason we remembered them a year later was because just then they submitted, and again, they resubmitted their portfolio. I was like, hey, I'm still available. So casting a wide net, it's really like 40 studios, go. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you sharing that too, because in many cases it is about timings. In many cases that role may not speak to your skill set. So it's about having that follow through and persistence. Speaking on behalf of recruiters everywhere, sometimes because we like to respond to each individual independently, it can take us a really long time to get back to you. So having that follow through and being able to remind someone of your skill set and of your talents and strengths is an invaluable exercise.
Yeah, I would also add that like sometimes I would post job postings, and I would actually like give them an example of what I would be looking for in an animator. And then I would get applications and portfolios submitted that look absolutely like nothing like, you know, what I'm requesting. And of course, you're not going to get a response, right? So it's rare that a hiring manager would actually share information or reference of like what they're looking for. But if they are, you should really like curate what you submit into to them that is related to what they're asking for. I know like Netflix, they asked for a prop designer and then they had to restart the process because they were getting such a wide variety of things. So they had to like give like, wait, we want something more like this, you know? Yeah.
No, that's a great reference actually. And I heard about that as well. Please get those final questions in because we will be getting closer to wrapping up as we spend more time with Ellen. One question that I missed earlier that I'm really disappointed in myself because it was submitted a while ago, and I think it's actually really interesting and speaks exactly to your transition. One of our participants asked, how does one go about pitching an animated show? And what does that mean? You know, how does that compare to what you've done in the commercial world? You know, what does that process look like when you're pitching an animation?
Okay, like, so precursor, I am a newbie at this. And if you want to learn more, I invite you to follow me on Instagram because I will probably be speaking to it as I go through it. So this is a live, you know, update of my journey into show pitching. So you first obviously have to have an idea. And a Nickelodeon showrunner told me, if you haven't done anything for it, start by writing a 11-minute script. You know, see if you can really figure out what your show is going to look like, right? But in terms of show pitching for other things, like there are people that work just in developing ideas and selling them to networks. And so those pitches could be a little bit less, like sometimes you can pitch something without a script. So basically you have to have an idea of what the world is like, a general sense of what the format is. Is it a 11-minute episode, 22-minute episode? Are there, you know, 15 episodes, or is it just 3 episodes of 1 hour long special? Like, what is the format, you know? Obviously, you have to introduce your characters, who your characters are, give some backstory to them. And then some examples of episodes, like you don't have to write the entire episode out, but maybe 3 episodes of what happens in each, like a summary. You can find examples of show pitch Bibles, like Adventure Time actually has their Bible online, and you could just search Adventure Time show Bible or pitch Bible. Another great one that was really cool was Stranger Things has their Bible online, and it looks really awesome. So like Stranger Things is, you know, inspired by those 90s like sci-fi mystery books, and their deck looks like it. It looks like an old beat up, you know, mystery novel. And it's set in a format so that you really get the sense of what that show is going to be. Depending on, the other thing is knowing where the show would live, right? Because like Nickelodeon pre-K is not going to have the same kind of content as Adult Swim, right? So knowing where you think your show fits in terms of genre, which, like, is it HBO? Is it Cartoon Network? Whatever. And then once you have your pitch developed, it's a matter of first getting some fresh eyes on it, right? Share your story, make sure that whatever you think is in your head is actually good and like makes sense to people. Get those first eyes on, like from colleagues or whatever. And then once that's ready, find the connections to the networks where you can pitch. I've been told from my friend at Pixar that generally most of these networks will accept pitch meetings, right? If you write in and say you have an idea, because they want content. They do want new stories and authentic voices. But it's a long process. And again, it's like pacing too, right? Like character motivations and pacing knowing what your story is about, knowing what your characters want, and then in your Bible, pacing that information out, ordering it in a way where anybody that you drop this Bible off to, they'll understand what you're trying to achieve. They'll understand what your show's about, who your characters are, and where it goes from finish to end.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you sharing that process. Do you enjoy it? Are you finding this a great learning experience? Is it stressful? Is it painful?
Yeah, it's a slow and steady process. And it is something that like developing a show idea takes a lot of time. And it's a lot of revisions, right? Because I wrote a 11-minute script. I showed it around to my friends and the reception was good, but then it turns out like it doesn't really give a sense of the actual episode. So then I have to expand the 11 to a 22-minute script where it feels more like a proper episode in the show that I want to create. And then from there, it's just like revisions and revisions and revisions. And then you might get to a point of revisions where by the time the next person reads it, they don't understand it because you've cut out some important information that you had in a previous draft, right? So it's like you always have to keep eyes on it, make sure that it makes sense. And it's just a long, steady process. You just have to keep at it.
Yeah, I admittedly feel like all of us here today are going through this process with you because you've been so transparent as to this experience. So I feel like I've learned a lot. So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
One of our participants wanted to know, just because you've spoken about your talents as an illustrator, how can you improve as an illustrator? Like, what are some tips and tricks that you can offer? You obviously showed your sketchbook earlier.
Yeah.
How did you find that you improved as you evolved as an artist? Like, what got you through?
I mean, I think a lot of it is like like there's something in fine arts world called a master copy where you just copy a painting that from Da Vinci or whoever you're trying to study from. And I would say that that's what like the first Pokemon and Sailor Moon drawings that I did were doing. I was trying to replicate what I was seeing actually being made. And so the other thing that I tell my students a lot is like reference is so key, that I think for the first week of any production or project that we start on, it's just gathering references. And that's the same deal for Chris Sasaki designing character at Pixar. It's like a week, 2 weeks of just gathering references, inspiration, drawing from those, right? You practice from real life before you learn how to stylize and warp those anatomical rules, right? So you always have to learn your foundation. And that's something that my dad really like pushed into me, that like, you got to learn the foundations, the realistic anatomy before you start playing around with it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, copying from real life. Don't like post it and say you did it, but like just for yourself to improve, make some copies. And then what happens when I copy something is then it becomes easier to draw it on my own. So like I'll copy a pose from an anatomy study, and then I'll be able to draw that for a character design later on, without any reference. So it's really just building your internal memory library.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have a few more minutes. Some of our participants are curious about, social media and how to promote themselves. I often talk to my students at SVA, coincidentally, and our fellow participants here at the Animation Project about how it's really important to keep a separate Instagram account to that of your personal Instagram account if you do want to promote your artwork. That's a really important value that I share with our participants. With that said, what are some tips that you offer to promote yourself as an artist on Instagram and how you get yourself out there and set yourself apart from the rest?
Yeah, I think hashtags are very important. And I think not just, hashtagging like 2D animation or character design, but hashtagging what it is. Is it a character design of a clown? Is it a character design of a dog? things like that. Because so when we were trying to find a team for our NBA spot, it was unique in that they wanted very realistic and painted pictures of their NBA players. And that's something that the usual pool of people in our animation pool that's like an illustration, person. Mm-hmm. And the way I found our key illustrator was searching NBA portrait, NBA art, NBA fan art. And that's how I found his work. So if it's your dream to work on a certain show like Steven Universe or a Marvel movie, make fan art of it and tag it appropriately. Yeah, I think hashtags are just quite important.
Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. I just have a couple more questions for you. One of which is, what do you most love about your job? I find that, and like for the past several years that I've known you, every time you talk about what you do, you're always so passionate, you're always so engaged, you're always so happy, even when I know things can be quite stressful in our world of design and post-production, and you've been so enthusiastic and so happy. And I'm just curious as to what motivates you and what do you most love about what you do?
Yeah, it's the people. It's like the amazingly talented people that I get to work with. And it just blows my mind sometimes, like, to give direction to an artist or a character designer or animator that I know is like so much better than me at what they do. It's really inspiring. I love that collaborative sense when, something comes together and it's like a team effort and we did it. So it really is just like an honor to be able to work with everybody that I've been able to work with. So
wonderful. I appreciate your saying that, and it definitely comes through quite nicely. My very last question that I like to ask you is, I also want to be respectful and acknowledge that we touched upon this earlier with the fact that, we are dealing with not one, but several pandemics at the moment. A lot of us are in very uncertain, in a sense of collective uncertainty, and our hearts are very heavy. And, things can be quite overwhelming and very difficult at this time. And, every day's different or not at all. Every day could feel like very much like the same day, a la Groundhog Day. But with that said, what is some advice that you might have for our participants, to help deal with the uncertainty, because it is collective. It is a very strange time.
Yeah.
We'd welcome your thoughts on that.
I'm not gonna lie, it is like a roller coaster sometimes. I have my off days where I just am feeling so dreadful about our future. Mm-hmm. But I think, as I was saying earlier, that like it really gave me this feeling of like life is so short to not be doing what you love. That I've always said, like, okay, I'll just wait until a couple years later, develop this, this idea that I have. And why in a couple of years? Do it now, right? Now more than ever is the time to be doing things that make you feel alive, that make you feel motivated. Yeah, and that's just kind of how I try to keep myself sane. That when I do have my days of despair, I read something that worry is such a taxing emotion to be wasting your time on. That's not to say, like don't think about it and don't do anything about it, but just don't get bogged down and keep moving forward. You have to keep moving forward. If there is some goal that you want to achieve and you feel overwhelmed by it, what I like to do is break it down into little tasks and try to like achieve it one tiny task at a time. And that makes it feel a little bit more manageable.
Mm-hmm. That's beautifully said. Life is very short to not do or pursue what you're interested in, what you're excited about. And worry is definitely an energy zapper, I would say.
Yeah.
These are words of advice that I try to share with myself as well. So I really appreciate you sharing. Ellen, it's been very, very special having you here. I'm very excited that you were able to kick us off on this exciting programming.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you back soon. Your
Hit
words
me
are
whenever. Very
really.
excited
Well,
to be here.
I'll take your word up on that.
Oh, damn. No, but I'm happy to help. Yeah.
And we're very grateful to have you. You're an inspiration. You're a pleasure to work with. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate your busy schedule, and we're delighted to have had you here.
All right. Yep. All right. Thank you guys for listening and watching.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.